Bonelab Patch 4 has finally dropped to mixed reception, but I think a lot of that comes down to the misunderstanding of what this update actually is. This is really crazy to me when the only thing we ever did get actual communication about for the past 2 years was about what exactly this update was. But regardless, there is still a whole lot to talk about. So this video will be covering everything. The good, the bad, and most importantly, explaining why a lot of what people brush off as minor changes are actually huge differences that will greatly help with not only the modding scene, but Stress Level Zero's ability to update Bonelab and make new games in the future. So without further ado, let's start off with some of the good. I don't know how to explain it, but it does feel a lot like more what I'm just trying to do. Gameplay, holy gameplay. First and foremost, before we even get onto that, the game loads a whole hell of a lot faster now. I don't know exactly what they did, but in previous builds of Bonelab, these loading screens used to take ages, and while they can still take a minute depending on the level, it is much faster, and you will definitely notice it if you've played a lot of Bonelab. I presume this has something to do with the new pre-caching shader system they added, which has the added benefit of making spawning in things no longer cause that initial load stutter. The notoriously garbage leg system, previously greatly approved upon in patch 3, is now, as I'd call it, 100% finished, fixed, and polished. That feels a lot better. Whoa!
Oh shoot, that does actually look really good.
No more being flung back to hover junkers when mantling a single fucking box. Climbing finally feels perfect. And while the changes made to climbing for the rig are great, not all rig changes are equal. This IK is horrible. Generally, this patch has only better and improved systems and changes that I'd heavily argue are just objectively better. But this fucking IK, man, it's not it. For reference, here's what throwing a right hook punch in Boneworks looks like. In patch 3, it looked a lot like this. Now here's patch 4. Ultimately, despite what I said during my first impressions with the patch, this doesn't actually affect gameplay, it just visually looks like ass. The punching I was whining about during my first impressions was just the player being made weaker, which is a good thing that I just needed to get used to, as the previous Bonelab rigs were way too strong. This new punching is much more grounded and much more realistic, which I think is a net positive. But while I was able to adapt and appreciate the changes to the punching, this IK I still truly believe is an objective negative. I've always been very proud of the IK in Boneworks and previous Bonelab patches, but this really needs some changing. I also presume it's the IK's fault for the new hand restrictions when holding some objects. In this demonstration, my left hand represents where the knife should be, but due to the changes to the IK, I am unable to without changing my grip on the item completely. I'm only willing to excuse this if it's fixed come patch 5, but for now, it's a minor issue, but one big enough to hopefully be important enough to be patched out by the time patch 5 releases, which shouldn't take nearly as long as patch 4, but more on that later. Visuals are way better. The light bake and volumetrics got overhauled, and every single level, even the custom maps to a minor extent, look a whole lot better. There's also a lot of changes to the campaign to a point where I would actually say that this campaign is alright. The stupid ass crane game only needs to be played once to open the ascent door as opposed to twice, first time originally being right after the introduction. There's a bunch of similar changes that just make the whole game a much better play, and hopefully SLZ is finally happy enough with the campaign to focus on other things now that it's not complete garbage. Don't get it wrong though, the campaign is still nothing special, it's just now there's an actually usable 33% of that game now. Performance is a lot better. When streaming, my FPS was garbage, so I couldn't really tell if the performance was any better at first, but going in and playing on my own, man, it is beautiful. The game just runs a whole fuck ton better. It's really nice, and with the community now using Melon Loader 0.6, code mods like Bonelab Fusion will likely, not guaranteed, run a whole lot smoother. Final good thing, the utility gun can now destroy anything that is a Marrow rigid body. Other than it being pretty funny, it does help visualize exactly what these internal changes affected. So those are the positives. Now it's time to get into the negatives before we get real deep into what the future of Bonelab is looking like. First of all, code mods on Quest are seemingly doomed. Melon Loader 0.5.7, which is the only version of Melon Loader that works on Quest, no longer works on PC, and the version of Melon Loader that does work on PC doesn't work on Quest. So because of this conundrum, modders have basically been put into a choice between code mods like Fusion being exclusive to Quest or them being exclusive to PC. And at least for right now, the decision of course was PC. While this is a gigantic blow to Quest users who use specifically code mods, it isn't a 100% lost cause that code mods may work in the future, but as for right now, if you're a big Quest Fusion fan, don't hold out hope. There's no guarantee of a Melon Loader 0.6 build ever coming to Quest. There's an annoying ass interaction issue that's most notably seen with pistols, where sometimes trying to grab it with your offhand will cause you to grab the slide instead, which can be fairly annoying. And now for the big one. All non-avatar mods are completely broken. Now I understand that the modding game basically having 2 years of mods wiped away is devastating. I really do understand that. But unlike a lot of the things SLZ has been putting us through as of late, this one actually needed to happen. The best way I believe to think about this update is as if Bonelab is being remastered and relaunched. It's a different game now, so your old mods using the old systems simply won't work anymore. It's no secret that Bonelab launched in a horrible state. Shitty SDK, shitty gameplay, and a shitty campaign. But what SLZ has spent the last year and a half doing was fixing that mistake. And I will never deny this is because the game wasn't ready and neither were the tools. Let me make something perfectly clear to all of you. I am not saying SLZ has done no wrong. Them releasing this game in the state it was originally in was fucked up and full of false promises. But instead of abandoning this game, they practically remade it and we are now getting the patches we should have gotten in the first place. This update is where Bonelab can finally actually start. SLZ really fucked up by launching Bonelab in the state that it was, and the result of keeping us mostly in the dark for so long also resulted in destroying a lot of faith in the community. But as of February 17th, communication was a whole lot better on Brandon's part, which while could have still been better, clearly showed a desire to improve. And now we finally have patch 4, and to the naked eye, this looks like a minor update with some quality of life changes that took way too long. But if that's the case, then why was my reaction to the update this? The answer isn't because of what's in this patch specifically, but rather that, in a way, Bonelab has finally launched. Finally, modders can make stuff without the looming fear that the SDK will be completely changed. Finally, SLZ can release updates within a timely manner with actual structure. And finally, this goddamn campaign is at least a little playable. So yeah, your mods are gone, and yeah, that sucks, it really does. But the reasoning is so that the future of modding can be better than ever. Because really, Bonelab has finally just now started. Okay, that was a lot, but I really wanted some kind of video out there that properly articulates the reason patch 4 was so exciting for so many people. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to check out my last one where you can see my first impressions of the patch and go over some more specific changes. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to catch you next time. Bye-bye.